And sometimes it's about doing people favors. Just how can you help them, right? And then I think you kind of build up some bank there. Know every blogger and influencer, give them stuff or the spotlight. So in our case, the early drivers of, some of the earliest drivers of our traffic were people who would blog about us. And our core audience was mostly women, young moms who were very tech savvy. And so we then decided that we would go to events like BlogHer. And literally, our first BlogHer we went to, we got mobbed. We felt like rock stars, right? We were just like, we had a booth with our shaky little poster thing that we hung on the back, and all of these people would come up, and they were very armed and activated. And we actually activated them further to become spokespeople for Picnic, and they would blog, and we could actually track a lot of that traffic back to our site. So I really believe that in terms of organic PR, organic self-marketing, there is a lot to be said of catalyzing these things to happen, and you never know where they're going to go. I mean, I could go into a little bit more detail, but kind of in the early days of some of the nodes that it jumped from the friends and family to this blogger, and then it went to this person, and it just, each one was an order of magnitude up, so be very resourceful and creative there with that. So I'm going to go to acquisition stuff. Any questions so far? Am I going too fast, too slow? How's the content okay? Okay, all right. So acquisition secrets, 11 things that you can control. This is a fictitious character. I was very bummed to find. I kept remembering there's the movie Jerry Maguire, right? The movie, the narrative was interspersed on occasion with sort of these little segues to the great Dickie Fox, the best sports agent in the world, and he'd have these sayings like, if it's not in here, it ain't gonna be here, you know. So it was kind of, and I wanted to embed that video in this, but anyway, I found out as I Googled him that he was made up. Cameron Crowe made him up. He never existed. So, but my point is, if you are the CEO, or if you are the business development person, and you're chartered with, if you're honest about selling your company is the exit, then you have to put a lot of time and energy into it. And as such, I'm going to give you 11 things that I thought worked well for us on the 2 occasions that I sold companies, or actually, well, yeah, 2 recent occasions. So create a very wide funnel. So if you know you're going to sell your company, you need to be establishing relationships with all of the big strategic buyers who have deep pockets. It actually kind of amazes me sometimes when I do talk with others, some of my colleagues, they very narrow cast their business. If there's a creative way that you can talk about your business such that it's interesting across a wider selection of buyers, that's one of the most high yield things you can do. I know it kind of probably sounds obvious, but not very many people do that. Number 2, close the imagination gap. Again, sometimes I'm surprised. Actually, on the sort of buyer side, times when I've worked at a Microsoft or at Google the first time and now back again, I help the companies, the corporate development teams of these companies look for other small companies to buy, right? And a lot of times I'm amazed at the fact that somebody who's a startup company CEO, they'll come in and they don't close the imagination gap. They don't proactively create a bunch of wireframes or visualizations for, hey, by the way, if you bought us, this is what the big Photos battleship could look like. It could look like this. This is what Picasa and Picnic could look like. Or this is what Facebook and Picnic. You know, you gotta close the imagination gap and put some wood behind that, and because fundamentally people are busy and they don't want to have to do that work themselves. Number 3, I feel like it's a very important thing. People like doing business with people that they like. Manners and approach does matter. And I also think that very importantly, the buying company, they have to be able to visualize you as their future coworkers. A lot of times, at least how it works these days with companies like Google or Yahoo or those kinds of tech companies, Microsoft, very quickly, if you've got if you're able to do this with the corporate development guys that are kind of filtering and sussing out these internet companies, very quickly they punt you over to the product team. So, and that's, I think, the harder thing that's the harder pitch to do. And when you're actually sitting across from somebody who's a vice president of the photos business, or a director of product development for something that's related to your company. They have to imagine you as their coworkers. So I know this sounds like it's sort of I don't know, a little touchy-feely, but you have to really understand how their culture works, even sort of get into the rhythm of how they communicate with themselves, and just sort of understand, just make it easy for them to visualize you as their coworker. This is something that all M&A firms will talk about. You bluntly, for any of this to be a go, have to fit into one of the buyer's top 4 strategic goals, whether you're going to give them more users, more engagement, more revenue, or time to market on a new technology than a cruise city above. And they're not, the different, and understanding what the sort of the high, what they value the most, what the priority is for each buyer is really important, because you're going to cater your pitch differently. Right. Again, I'm often surprised on the buying side when I get a pitch from an incoming CEO that wants his company sold, wants his company bought. I sometimes will get a generic deck, and you don't want that, or a generic pitch, right? It's like, well, do you think about the fact that this particular strategic buyer, they actually don't care about more revenue. They care most about more engagement, higher average session times, and then what are you telling me that makes me feel good about that? Number 5, this was actually a point of debate with my own business partners. I think sometimes maybe I'm a little sort of overly sort of relationship oriented in my dealings in terms of how to sell a company, but I think you can't be super direct in the beginning. It's not a superstition. I believe it's just sort of protocol. I think you have to just put yourself in play, get in there, and let the situation develop. And in that way, it's analogous to how you treat the press like they're real people. Don't overfunction and your first meeting go, we're interested in getting bought by you guys. So let's, because that puts people in an uncomfortable situation where they have to start. Well, do I have to start talking deal points, or do I have to? Oh my God! Then my next meeting has to be with my VP to sign off on the some valuation analysis that God, I don't have time to do. You just want to get to know what is important to that product team. You want to do the closing the imagination gap, and just let it sort of happen. And sometimes it behooves you. I know this sounds counterintuitive because you're pitching your company, buy my company. But sometimes it behooves you to be the person that talks the least in the room and just